going to read The Bears on Hemlook Mountain, Chapter 2. Let's start. 2. Young Uncle James. Jonathan was very fond of his uncles. He was fond of his cousins and his aunts. It was pretty fine for a boy to have so many uncles and aunts. If all his uncles and aunts stood side by side, they would go all the way from the house to the gate or very narrowly. He looked all the uncles, but best of all, he liked young Uncle James. Young Uncle James was only 14 years old, so he and Jonathan were friends. Young Uncle Jonathan had eyes that saw and ears that heard. "Look," he would say to Jonathan, "down by that tree stump is a cottontail." Then he and Jonathan were very still. They could see the little brown rabbit washing his face and his ears. "Listen," young Uncle James would say, "there is a song sparrow. Do you hear what he says?" Then he and Jonathan were very still. They could see the song sparrow singing on a branch. And the song sparrow was saying over and over again, "Put on the kettle, kettle, kettle." Once Jonathan and Uncle James went down to the brook. It was late in the day and the shadows were long. "What are we going to see?" asked Jonathan. "Wait and you will find out," said Uncle James. So they waited and listened. It was hard for Jonathan to keep so still. They waited and listened, and at last a raccoon came down to the brook. He had an apple in his mouth. "Look," said Uncle James. "Look carefully, Jonathan." Jonathan looked. The raccoon took the apple in his two front paws. He dipped in the water and dipped in it and dipped it and dipped it again. "Coons like their food wet," said Uncle James. That was the way of it. Every day Jonathan and Uncle James listened and looked. They never threw sticks at the animals or scared the birds. Soon all the animals and birds were their friends. The squirrel was the best friend of all. He came very near to get nuts from Jonathan. "Uncle James," said Jonathan, "did you ever see the bear?" "Well now," said Uncle James, looking important, "I believe I did. But it was years ago." "Jonathan, how many years ago? Before you were born?" "Yes, it was before you were born." "I would like to see a bear," said Jonathan. "I would rather see a bear than anything in the world." "Maybe you will," said Uncle James. That was all he said, but Jonathan kept on thinking about bears.